God knows the beginning from the end. He already knows something about what you're going to do.
They should have some kind of flag or some kind of filter or something saying, well, this person's deceased. Does that make sense?
Well, here's what I can tell you as a lawyer. State law already requires the Bureau of Vital Statistics to issue any death certificate to the State Board of Elections.
Okay.
The State Board of Elections can remove that person if that person's on the rolls. One of two possible problems or two possible problems here. One is that that's not happening from the Department of Vital Statistics, or it's being received by the Board of Elections and not being processed. I don't know if either of those is the case or both of those are the case.
Well, I can tell you, I'm not trying to interrupt, but I can tell you in my case, I was given 2 forms, and my father had actually died earlier in the year, and I was given 2 forms to fill out and actually turn those in. I'm like, why am I having to do this? It seems like it's something that should be a natural part of the process.
You're right. It should be, according to the law, it is.
Okay.
My hope is that it's being followed, and if you have evidence that it's not been followed, I'd like to follow up on it.
I don't mind telling you and showing you. I actually recorded one of those incidents.
Well, I'll check too. Again, I haven't checked since past November and see if my deceased husband is still on there, Michael, and I can get that information back to you as well.
Here's what I would recommend. If you want to track a thing like that, send an open records request to the Bureau of Vital Statistics and ask them to send a copy of their notification to the State Board of Elections.
That would be excellent.
Do the same thing for the Board of Elections, and that way we can track who dropped the ball of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, could I ask you another question? Prior to the election, there was all kinds of movies on the internet by people like Millie Weaver, and she had a big movie saying that there was a whistleblower that turned in evidence that there was fraud in the voting in Kentucky in November. Is that true, or can you give us a little follow-up on what happened to all that information about the whistleblower and Millie Weaver? And
Millie Weaver is an independent radio announcer. Do you know any information on that, Michael?
No one has offered me any such information. I said during the campaign, during my transition after I got elected, and then since I've been elected, if anyone has evidence of voter fraud or irregularities, please produce that to my office and we'll take a look. But so far, that invitation hasn't been accepted by anybody.
Wow.
And I do understand that we're using multiple systems. Is that correct? Actually process the votes. It's not just one system, 2 or 3 different.
So one thing that's unique to Kentucky that a lot of states don't have, if you go across the river, the Secretary of State of, say, Ohio, Indiana, the elections are run by the state. The state decides what the voting equipment is, decides all that stuff. We're a very decentralized state. Our culture is very pro-local government. So what that means is I don't get to decide what type of machines people vote on. I have my preferences, but it's up to the counties. Counties get grants from Congress and grants from the state, and then they decide what equipment they want, and then they go buy it. So we've got 1,000 flowers blooming of different types of equipment used by different counties. Use paper ballots, some use electronic machines, some use a mix of both.
And my further understanding is those votes are actually somewhat put together and then further processed by another company that's even outside of this country. Does that ring any bells?
No, the votes are not processed by any external entity. They are processed by the county boards of elections.
Okay.
And uploaded to me and the state.
Directly.
No foreign company that processes our
Okay.
election.
There's probably tons of information and disinformation. We're trying to get the most accurate vote we can. People lose by fractions of votes sometimes.
But John, remember when you and I looked down there, and if you look it up, it's on our state. When your predecessor was in office still, we looked it up, and it was a company that dealt with tabulating voter votes, and it was out of country. So do you remember the name of it? I don't have the information now.
Vital.
Yes, that's exactly it.
VYTL.
Yes.
Vital has a state contract. I'm reviewing that contract. I get to decide whether we keep it or not. So that's coming up soon. I'll have the option to renew it or not renew it. Actually count the votes. The votes that are certified by the county boards of elections and then uploaded to me, all of that is done securely and does not involve CITL. They don't have any role in that. They have web development responsibilities and so forth, but they are not part of counting the votes.
So web
They can,
development.
now their technology and their services can reflect the votes, but they don't count the votes. Big difference.
So when you say web development, you mean
They do website work, but they don't count the votes.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, really, really good question. I get this question all the time.
I
Police had a church the other day and asked me the same question. Yeah, they do have a contract that I may elect to terminate, but regardless, they are not in charge of counting the votes. The votes are cast and counted only by Kentuckians.
Well, that's a relief because we were under the assumption from other sources.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm so glad, so very glad we can get this out to our listeners so they can be at ease.
Are all these votes, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, I just got a lot of questions about this. Hopefully a little bit entertaining to the audience. My information was that at least on one of these systems, most of these things have some sort of a paper trail, but one of these systems, and I don't know if it was in Lexington or where it was, but it generated some sort of a trail that was based on its own internal calculations. In other words, there was no user or anything that marked it. I guess it would be more or less like a log. There wasn't a separate way to track whether or not that actually was. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Let me give you an update on that. So there is a bill that Representative Nancy Tate of Meade County has filed. This bill would move our state to a paper ballot system. Right now, we've got 29 counties of the 120 that use only electronic equipment, all of which is not able to produce a paper trail.
Right.
I will tell you, I spent 2 years of my life traveling the state, campaigning with everybody, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and what I heard from everybody on every side of the political spectrum is people have real concern about the lack of a paper trail. It's not an ideological or partisan issue, it's just a common sense issue. I want to know for sure that my vote counted.
Exactly.
If there's a concern, we can go verify that the count's legitimate. And Democrats think that Russia is trying to hack us, and so we need to make sure. And Republicans think that there's domestic vote fraud. To some extent, both sides are onto something. The only way to establish continued public integrity and public confidence in our elections is to address the technology. So I've supported that legislation. It just got introduced the first of the week. My hope is that there will be funding in the state budget for that. It's not going to be cheap, but the good news is this bill doesn't make everyone move paper ballots immediately because the cost would be very high. It provides for an attrition process. The counties that most need an update on their equipment would be moved up is the idea based on what I've discussed with Representative Tate and the State Board of Elections. I also applied about a month ago for a federal grant for $6.4 million. The state has agreed to match funds with the feds, and so we're going to have at least $8 million grant counties to upgrade their equipment. This stuff is not cheap. So we're going to focus first on the 29 counties that have the most obsolete equipment and then go from there. But the goal here in this bill is over time, through attrition, we're going to be able to get every county up-to-date equipment that's going to be 100% paper ballot.
Wow, that's just so much information. We thank you. Gosh.
Let me ask one other thing. Is there a bill number with that paper ballot bill?
By Nancy Tate, do you know the bill number?
You can just bear with me for a moment. I'll pull it up on my computer. I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
Well, I think you should know it all.
I've read a lot of bills this week. We're kind of running together.
I'm giving you a hard time. Well, we thank you.
You're doing a great job.
A whirlwind of knowledge, and we are very thankful that you won your position that you are in.
Well, thank you. I'm doing the job. It's House Bill 638.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Simon, do you have anything else?
Well, no, that's it. Now, during your campaigning, you said that you might try to get the Ohio system working in Kentucky. Did I remember that correctly?
No, I said that unlike Ohio, we are deficient in keeping our rolls maintained. As far as I know, there's no unique technology that's required that they have and we don't. It's just a matter of following the law. And by the way, on this point, the law that I'm talking about that requires us to keep our voter rolls clean, it's a law that was passed by a Democratic Congress and signed by Bill Clinton in the early 90s.
Wow.
It's a law, the state version of which was passed by Democratic General Assembly and signed by Jones, a Democrat. Not a partisan or ideological mission that I have. I just want to follow the law. The law requires us to keep these rolls cleaned up. And we've been deficient for a good decade now. And so that's part of what I'm working on is just getting us in compliance. But we don't have to change our law to what Ohio has to do that. We just have to follow the law that we already have.
Okay, that's good.
Do you all have any other questions? We just hate to keep you. We just thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time.
this has been a big help. Yeah, tremendous.
Great talking with you all.
I could probably keep you for an hour, and then you'd really be mad at. I'd definitely like to follow up on these bills. We go to Frankfurt, and we will try to follow up on that, and we will seek those open records requests as well.
Let's hold people accountable. Let's find out who's dropping the ball, what's going on here.
Yes, that sounds great. I have one quick question, if you don't mind. Do you have time? I'm trying to hold my phone up to the mic. How often, or do you think it's a problem with people putting people back on the rolls if they know that they are deceased? Because, like, say, if somebody submits a voter
enrollment,
shouldn't it be the State Board of Elections' duty to make sure, or responsibility, that that person is actually alive and not deceased? That's kind of a concern I'm thinking too, that we could have had a problem in the past.
I'm not aware of someone who has died and been taken off the rolls being fraudulently put back on the rolls. If anyone has any evidence of that, obviously that's a significant criminal offense, and that person should be prosecuted. So if anyone has evidence of that, please provide it to my office. We'll ensure that justice is done. But I'm not aware of that as a particular method of vote fraud that people are committing. Any other vulnerabilities that are far likelier and more significant than that.
I do have one last question.
A much bigger vulnerability is people who are already dead and already on the rolls versus people who have died and been taken off and then get put back on.
Yes.
To me, if someone's been removed because they're dead, it's probably not worth the risk of someone attempting to put them back on. Let me give you an example. If you come down and you register to vote, they take that, your county clerk processes it, or the State Board of Elections processes it, depends on where you registered. They run that voter registration against their system to see if it's duplicative. So you can't register twice, right? It also tells the clerk or the State Board of Elections worker if that person's deceased, already been reported as deceased, or if they've been taken off because they're a felon or what have you. There are various rationales for taking someone off the rolls who's been on them before. So the likelihood that someone would register in the name of a dead person, I think, is very low. Now, voting in the name of a dead person, that's a lot easier to do and get away with than registering a dead person, because the system will tell us that that person's already been judged as having passed away.
Okay, well, we want to discuss some of this stuff later with you in your office without being on the radio. We do have some evidence we think we'd like to talk to you about.
Great.
Do you have anything, Dr. Simon?
No, I think you did a great job, Michael, and we appreciate it. And
My
it's
pleasure.
a real encouragement that we got somebody working on the voter process. Hopefully we'll have a good vote.
We needed somebody like you for many, many, many years. I'm 62, and we needed you when I was 22.
Thanks, you're too kind. I look forward to meeting you all here in the Capitol.
Okay, well, John and I might come down and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
I'll take you up on
Appreciate
it.
Thank you, sir, so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right.
That's a good encouragement, isn't it?
I don't want to discuss anymore. We'll discuss the other part later, but that was really excellent.
Very good. And it seems like he's really trying to clean up the rolls. Looks like he has to go to court in order to do that.
He was going to court about how he saw that there were an increase, 5 to 10% of phantom voters went up from 300,000 to 400,000.
Unbelievable.
And the phantom voters, did I hear him right, that it means that people...
Well, a person could go vote basically in the name of somebody else. Part of that would be solved with a voter photo if they actually pay attention. You're going to have someone there who is watching
Cognitive.
to make sure that that's actually taking place.
That's just amazing to me because, and I'm glad he clarified that. I thought that they put on people back on that weren't supposed to be on. Weren't you under that assumption?
They took people that were on an inactive list or something like that and put them all back on just before the election. And so people thought, well, what in the world are those dead people they're putting back on?
Well, we didn't know.
The clarification that I got after the election or whatever was they were not taken completely off, as Michael said, but they were put on inactive status.
Yeah.
If you were going to vote and you were on that inactive list, you had to kind of insist upon it and they had to check you out. My understanding, the county clerk would have had to approve
they couldn't get a hold of him. They wrote him letters and everything. He never answered. And then if all of a sudden he shows up at the polls and tries to vote, that's a good thing because they couldn't find him for years and years.
Did he get to vote?
Yeah, he would have been able to vote. They didn't know if he was alive or dead or in prison or in another state or where he was. So it put him on an inactive list so that if he did show up, they could catch up with him and put him down as an active voter.
Right.
But he said most of them didn't show up to vote.
The inactive?
That is what I understood.
Talk about Michael?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Remember, there's 31, 32 gender identities. Anyway, sorry about that, folks, but let's talk a few minutes about some bills.
Oh, yeah, good.
And I found that interesting, and I had forgotten about that the Senate bill number or the numbers means the priority of the bill. And
Yeah.
I had forgotten all about that. So nice to see that they considered sanctuary bill number 1, and then the one that Michael helped write,
Photo ID.
Photo ID. And of course, the Senate bill 1 was with Daniel Cameron, who's
Yeah.
our
Attorney General.
Attorney General. Thank you. I went blank there. So that's really neat. I had forgotten all about that, about the priority. So unfortunately, the Senate bill or the House bill, I think it was 620 something, he said, that's way down the list.
638.
38, the Representative Nancy Tate did about the Kentucky paper ballot, but at least it's there. But I think we need to address, too, a really important thing. I think the most important one we need to talk about is Senate Bill 90. Maybe we might be giving out another robocall to you guys to call in. It's about the protecting the exercise of the medical ethics and diversity within the medical profession. It's protecting people who are Christians and or do not believe in abortion, that they would not be made to perform an abortion. Look at abortion if you're a doctor, medical student. I just found out 2 of the professors at University of Louisville actually perform the abortions at EMW.
Oh, really? Those 2 ladies are...
Yeah, I don't have them named for you
Well,
right now, but
yeah.
you probably know them.
I know that there are 2 ladies
Yes,
that do
they're
abortions
2
at
ladies,
EMW.
and they're the 2 professors that get their students to come and look at these abortions, and that is horrendous. That right there needs to be called out on.
Do they have a bill number or what?
Yeah, Senate Bill 90.
Let me write that down. Senate Bill 90.
Did you bring his? Here it is. Hold on a minute.
Okay. See, does that...
This
you have
tells
the
you about
wording?
it. This tells you it's about please work to end U of L's involvement with the abortion clinic in Louisville. This is a resolution. What they're trying to do is maybe make them accountable, saying you're getting appropriations from us, the state. You don't need to be involved in abortion directly because it's a direct involvement with U of L professors with the abortion clinic. That's a direct conflict of interest between the states telling their students they need to go over there and watch these abortions. That is horrendous to my mind.
Like you say, we need to do a robocall on Senate Bill 90
Yes.
for the U of L 2 ladies that are doing abortions at the abortion clinic on, is that Market Street?
I don't know. How about you? Do you know?
EMW.
I'm not positive that.
Family Foundation was what gave me this information. Kent
Well,
did,
we'll
but
try to get
we'll
more
find out more
information on
information
that.
later
Yeah,
and talk
yeah.
about this next week. Hopefully.
Okay, God bless you. Thanks for
Thank
listening
you.
and tune in again next week for the rest of
For
the
the
news.
news.
Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Simon. I'm an allergist and family doctor, board certified in both allergy and internal medicine. I specialize in allergy, headaches, sinus, hives, cough, asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. We're located at 1404 Browns Lane near Norton Suburban Hospital. Our phone number is 895-5088. We can see you tomorrow. Hello, this is Frank Simon with the rest of the news, and our special guest today is John Brewer. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
John is a part-time pastor.
I am, and I think we have a spiritual crisis that we're going to talk about.
Now, I took some notes. They say that California, I guess, shut down completely, didn't it?
I know they're in very bad shape.
They said that they want everybody to, what do they call it, isolate in place or something like that.
The coronavirus is just taking its toll everywhere right now.
I looked out my kitchen window this morning, and sometimes I see a deer or a rabbit or a squirrel, and I looked out again today. I imagined I saw coronavirus all over my yard. They've taken over the world.
It does seem like that. This is almost starting to remind me of 9/11 when you looked out the door and there were no planes in the skies and everything. It's just totally abnormal.
A lot of the churches are kind of shutting down.
They're actually trying to mandate that they don't meet in those churches.
Now,
no longer a suggestion. They're mandating it.
Do you have Psalm 91 there?
I do have Psalm 91 there.
Right there?
Right here, yes.
Great minds think alike. Well, read that.
Let me read this to you. This is in the King James. I hope that you can adjust your ears if you're not familiar with the King James. Just pretend you're listening to Shakespeare a little bit, about the same time era. But Psalm 91, it's only got 16 verses. I'll just read the whole thing.
Okay, good.
All right. It says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty."
That's somebody that prays, in other words.
That is. I want to come back to that one verse. That verse is the key verse.
Yeah.
Then it says, "I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust."
Wait a minute. Does that mean you don't have to be afraid or panic?
You don't have to be afraid.
Oh, wow.
We want to look back at this first verse because this first verse is actually the key to the... But let me go through it. Let's say we're just doing everything that the first verse wants us to do.
Okay.
We're going on. Third verse says, "Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence." Now, pestilence...
That's corona, isn't it?
That's a disease, yeah. It is a disease.
He's going to deliver us?
That's what it says. Then it says, "He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wing shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence," again.
That's coronavirus.
That's coronavirus, "that walketh in the darkness, nor for the destruction that resteth at noonday." And it says, "1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right side, but it shall not come near thee." Nigh thee is what it says, but I'm going to say near thee. So
okay.
"Only which thine eyes shalt thou behold, and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation." We're going to want to tie that verse 9, with verse 1.
Okay.
All right. But then it says, "There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague." Now, wait a minute. A plague is coronavirus. All right.
So no coronavirus will come near my house.
"Neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. Bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion, the young lion, and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because He hath set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him.
Amen.
I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation."
Amen. So what was the first verse again?
Now, the first verse, first of all, I want to tell you, this is a passage is what the devil tempted Jesus with. Dash your foot. He's going to prevent you from dashing your foot. If you don't get this first verse, the rest of the verses do not count.
Okay.
The first verse says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High."
In other words, we got to pray.
And we got to be with Christ. We got to spend time with Him, being directed by Him, loving Him, and listening to Him. So if you're not doing that, the Lord knows when you pray a half-hearted prayer.
Uh-oh.
The Lord knows when you don't really believe, but you're just mouthing the words. The Lord knows that if it's not coming from inside of you and you are not seeking Him, we have the privilege
Jesus gave us the privilege of going to the Holy of Holies. God dwells within us.
Amen.
We have this wonderful privilege. We are the temple of God. We have the ability to go and listen and pray and talk to. We're very good at talking. We're not very good at listening. But God speaks in a small, soft voice. And if we are not tuned and trying to do this, then we're going to do all kinds of things that are wrong. The rest of those verses that he promises, those are promises. Since God dwells within us, we can count on this promise.
So, in other words, he's saying if you pray sincerely, God will protect you from this coronavirus.
And you're seeking him not for some sort of gain.
You want his will.
Yes, his will. I think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they all went up and they said, we're not going to bow the knee to the demon. Yes.
Yeah.
What they said is, our God can deliver us. But even if he doesn't, we still will believe and we still will go through with this.
We're not going to worship the devil.
We're not going to bow that knee.
That's great. And he says, no coronavirus. I'm reading between the lines just
That's
a little
fine.
bit. No coronavirus is going to come near us.
Now, I don't know what the accuracy of this was. This was back a long time ago. I've done so much research this week that I cannot even tell you exactly where I read it. But I think it was back during the bubonic plague. People were dying left and right. But he was a shoemaker. People would still come in to buy his shoes. To his left, to his right, people were dying. Just dying. He put up on his shop Psalm 91. And he trusted in the Lord. And these people that didn't believe, they would die too. Think about this. Ananias and Sapphira pretended to be good Christians, that they had a very sudden death because the Lord knew their heart.
Oh, boy. And according to the word of God here in Psalm 91, God will protect us and we don't have to panic or have a nervous breakdown or anything. We can trust in God and he's going to bring us through.
The media won't tell you this. Now, we thought about this and God is really the first solution. But they'll talk to you about stress. They'll talk to you about medicine. But the truth of the matter is, if we put our trust, I always loved the Stonewall Jackson. Now, those of you who are not familiar with Stonewall Jackson, he was a Southern Confederate general, and he was on the front lines. Believe it or not, some people don't believe maybe that some of the people in the South, some of the Confederacy, were actually, but he believed that he could not be killed before his time. Here's the point. Every man has an appointed time. God knows it. You can't escape it. You can't add one more second to your life. You could obviously take away, and God somehow knows that too. And I step out in the middle of traffic.
You're asking for it.
You're asking for it.